first panelist for the session is Dr. Vaibhav Tipke, CEO of S4S Technologies. Vaibhav is the co-founder and CEO of S4S Technologies, a pioneer in food preservation using innovative dehydration technologies. A dynamic leader and scientist, he guided S4S in developing patented dehydration organizations like USAID, UKAID, Gates Foundation, and the Government of India's for the agri ecosystem. Serving the entire value chain, he has enabled. A third panelist for the session is Suchitra B, COO and founder director at Nanopix IS Limited. Let us welcome her with a big round of applause. The director and the person in charge of non-technical activities such as HR, finance, and operations management. Suchitra holds an MBA from the University of Madras and specializes in corporate secretariat. Before Nanopix, she worked at ABN AMRO Bank and Human Resources firm before managing one of her own. We welcome you. Our moderator for the third panel today, Mr. Rachit Parekh, joined Axel in 2019.
Introduction and welcome everyone back. I think among all the panels today, something that stood out to me when we were also chatting before was that everyone here is actually very commercially minded, more than impact minded, but impact is almost a byproduct, which is great in many ways. It's in some ways we were discussing potentially more sustainable in the long run. Maybe before we get started, I'd love for an introduction of what exactly your organizations do, a short introduction to what Samannati does, what Nanopix does, what S4S does, and
for providing this opportunity. Samannati is a Sanskrit word meaning Sam and Unnati, which is collective growth, collective elevation, collective prosperity. We work only in the agriculture value chain, and the mission of Samannati is how do you make markets work for smallholder farmers. In India, 85% of the farmers are smallholder farmers with less than 2 hectares of land and vulnerable. So our entire activity in the entire value chain, what we do is how do you create that impact? And we also help them with credit and market linkages. We bring in best of the technologies to them. And we also in the morning session spoke about water, climate change. So Samannati's endeavor is in terms of how do you bring in everything and we keep farmer at the center and provide him with all the services. So that's what is Samannati. And we operate out of 23 states. And one of the important things in the agriculture sector is you need to constantly do a lot of work on institutional capacity building. So that's where we also have the foundation arm. Through the foundation arm, we do the institutional capacity building for the smallholder farmers. We do a lot of gender and financial inclusion. We do women empowerment. And finally, we also work on the entire climate smart agriculture. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Suchitra. So I come from an organization called Nanopix. We are one of the early startups incubated from Deshpande Foundation. So it's a very proud thing for me. So what we do is we make image processing based product development for the food industry, especially right now we are focused on the dry fruit industry. So we make grading machines for the dry fruits where it's a very unique machines. We have 40 patents for that, and which can grade dry fruits by size, shades, color, infections, or any other damage or any other quality parameters that is needed by the market in a single pass. For right now, we have 7+1 grade in the current market, which is more than 1,000 units in 23 states in India and 10 plus countries. Also, we have come up with another variations of the higher end technology with a hyperspectral analysis and 18 grades. So that is one thing I want to say. We are so I'm also very proud to say that we are early startup, and we are also a bootstrap company from Deshpande Foundation and Cash Positive. So that is impact that is created by Deshpande Foundation.
I think definitely deserves a round of applause because Nanopix is also based in Hubli, incubated by Deshpande startups, and has scaled up from here. So
yeah.
My name is Vaibhav. I am a CEO and co-founder at Agritech Technologies. We are basically a farm-gate food processing company. What we do is, at a village level, we create a procurement and processing unit where agriculture output is basically brought by the farmers, and then that is converted into the value-added products at the farm gate. So that's the supply chain. It is completely powered by women entrepreneurs at a farm gate, where we work across segments. We do fruits, vegetable processing into dehydration, grain into pulses and the starches, and also milk. We started converting milk into milk powder. So that's the value chain we work with, and mainly we buy all of these processed food ingredients from these women entrepreneurs, collect, aggregate, do a quality check, and sell mainly to B2B companies. So that's the domain we are into. Work with women-led FPOs, women entrepreneurs. Currently, we are more than 3 lakh farmers that we are buying from, and almost 2,500 women entrepreneurs that we are working with. We are currently working in state of Maharashtra, part of Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, MP, UP. So that's what our presence is. Thank you.
Great, thank you for the introduction. So maybe before we even put the audience to understand at level set is, what does all three of you work on the output side, and we can maybe focus a little bit on that. What does the supply chain and value chain even look like today? Like what does, from the farmer perspective, from the buyer perspective, what does this supply chain look like, and where are the real problems here? Sridhar, Vaibhav, maybe you can talk a little bit about that since you directly work in these supply chains.
Very good question. I will touch from the farmer's perspective first. Definitely the smallholder farmers, they find it very difficult to identify a good market. They don't get a good market. And because of a lot of other challenges in terms of logistics and all, it's really a challenge for them, and they end up going and selling it to the local trader. From a value chain efficiency perspective, you have all those traders, aggregators who have been predominantly working in that area, and they add a lot of value. For example, many of those traders, aggregators, they also support the farmer family in a couple of other things when they need in terms of education, healthcare, medicine and all. But more important, if you look at from the demand side perspective, all the institutional buyers and some of the processors, they have started also realizing if they have to really have a good procurement and the quality that they want, it's important they also invest and work across the farm cooperatives and the collectives so that they can get the procurement, the quality that they want, and they are also able to say that it is sustainable. So from Samunati's perspective, we work on the entire value chain, especially when it comes to post-harvest. We see that every actor in that post-value has got a role to play, and there is no disintermediation as such. Everyone acts to their strength, and there is an opportunity for entities like Samunati and others who can actually look at in terms of where you fit your product and solutions, and so that you can give it. So from my perspective, challenges are there at the farmer level, but if other demand side players like the institutional buyers, the processors, if they come in and they really put that investment and also the process in place in terms of their procurement, quality, as saying your entire logistics, go down warehouse, it adds a lot of value. And definitely there are no challenges in terms of, a middleman will take away some of the and the margins will be excused. Absolutely, there are no challenges as such. There is enough pie for everybody to be in this space.
So maybe just to double click a little bit, right? So effectively, typically, and maybe we can talk a little bit about this, from the farmer perspective, most of them are how many layers are there between a farmer and, let's say, us as consumers? How many middlemen exist today?
Typically, if you look at between farmer and the end consumer, we are seeing between 5 to 7 people. Those are existing at various value chains. And very interestingly, in Indian context, crop-wise plus geography-wise, these value chain layers are dramatically changing. And I may give specific examples of how that is happening. So, for example, if you look at very different value chain, let's look at makhana, right? So in makhana, farmers basically grow it in more of a talab thing, and then they harvest it. The people who are buying
makhana is for everyone here like lotus seeds, right?
Lotus seeds. So basically, mainly cultivated in Bihar, and when farmers are harvesting, it's a wet product, it's a seed. And people who are buying are basically small-scale processors who convert that makhana seed into a pop makhana, right? Now, if you look at how this transaction is occurring, is that farmer basically harvests that and give it to the small processor. These small processors are buying from farmers, but they are not paying to farmers. They say that when my pop makhana gets sold, then only I will pay you, right? And in the whole process, they count 62, 63 kg of wet makhana. They say, I am going to lose the weight, so I am going to pay you only for 45 kg. Right? So whether middleman is necessary? Absolutely necessary. The transparency, that system is challenging. Versus you look at pop makhana, for example, right? The entire weighing of the makhana doesn't happen only for the pop makhana. They said, this is my, a trader comes in, the trader says, this is my bag, whatever is filled in the bag belongs to me, right? So if he increases the bag size by 1 inch, then also it's very difficult whether you are measuring a 30-inch bag or 31-inch bag. So there are there are lack of transparency, but this is very value chain specific. I will give a second example of, for example, corn. Corn in Maharashtra, for example, just for comparison purpose, typically a trader will decide a pricing, and generally he sends a harvester or a threshing machine to the farmer level, where the corn is basically undergoes a threshing, and when farmer is supplying that maize back to a trader, at that point that amount of service fees is deducted. Versus you go to Bihar again, it is a completely different thing. Here we are doing the threshing of an entire corn cob. Over there, a corn cob outer cover is removed and the threshing is done. So it is very geography-wise changing, and even for one product, district by district, region by region, it is changing. So if we have to really look into and zoom into these value chains, we have to be geography specific, value chain specific. So no single answer is established for Indian context.
Yeah, if I can just adding on to what Vaibhav is saying, these actors are very important into the value chain, right? Whether we are talking of an aggregator, a MSME and all. The reason why players like Samunati or some of the demand side actors wanted to engage here is there is a strong social capital in the trade capital which is already built between the farming community and this particular middleman. So we definitely need to engage with them, work more with them. And what you rightly said in terms of the payment terms, maybe I will just pay you as an advance, or I will just pay you for a 50 kg. Rest I will pay after the processing is done. And that's where players like Samuniti and the other financial partners come in, where then there is an opportunity for working capital which you can give. There is a farmer loan. So that way, in the value chain, these actors play an important role, because there are a lot of information softer. Though it is softer, it's useful for players like us to actually leverage on it.
So I will just add a few more viewpoints. So though we are not directly from the supply chain management, we know people from the processors who are getting it from the farmers, the cashews. Generally, we see a parity between the local grown nuts and the African grown nuts. Generally, it is considered that the Konkan coast nuts are the superior in quality when it comes to taste, color, and size. But what happens in the Indian market is the local nuts get very less value because it is directly procured from the farmers by the processors. But the value they get is probably 100 rupees per kg. But whereas when they procure it from the African market, they are paying a little more. So these price parity creates the demotivation to these farmers of why I should grow cashews, whether it is because I'm not getting as much as the comparison is there. I'm not saying it is not profitable for the farmers or nothing like that, but this price parity, if somebody can intervene and this can be corrected, it can really help us increase the production of these kind of dry fruits the nuts in the market, which is a growing industry. If you really see, the dry fruits and the nut industries are growing at 25% CAGR every year. The consumption of Indian dry fruit industry is really growing. So we have to capitalize and see how the price parity for this imported nuts and the Indian grown nuts are reduced. So this is something I wanted to tell.
So what I'm hearing again from just kind of recapping what everyone is saying is that the middlemen are necessary. They play a role in terms of financing. They play a role in terms of making sure that products are bought at the right time. But at the same time, because of the layers and number of middlemen, there is lack of transparency on pricing, and farmers don't necessarily get what they deserve, not just in terms of pricing, but also in terms of how they manage weighing, quality, etc. And farmers don't necessarily get what is the market price every single time. And obviously there are nuances on this, right? I think there are many states that are far ahead in terms of their ability to transmit the right prices, and many states are far behind for various reasons, historical reasons as well as other reasons. So I think that's something that's very clear. Where do you see the opportunities? I think would love to understand from you, all three of you run fairly successful scale businesses. Where do you see the opportunities to solve some of these problems? Where do you see the opportunities to kind of create commercial value? I'm not talking about necessarily philanthropic opportunities. I think those we all know that exist in a number of places, but where do you see the opportunity in terms of commercial value? And the other thing I also wanted to sort of ask as you think about this question is that what has changed? You, all three of you, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but have been doing agri-focused businesses for a decade or more. So what has changed in the decade, before we even get into opportunities, what has really changed on the ground in the last decade that you have been operating, or maybe nothing has changed, I don't know, but what has changed on the ground? Has the technology, whether it's financial infrastructure through sort of digital payments, whether it's bank accounts, whether it's other sort of infrastructure, what has changed on the ground for the better or for the worse?
If I can start. So if you are talking about the opportunities in the agriculture sector, the opportunities are immense. For example, see, there is a lot of, we are focusing we are a software country, we have so many software engineers, we are focusing so much on apps for the agriculturalists and all that, but there is so much of opportunity in mechanical or this hardware devices. Because I'm saying this because we are losing out a lot of opportunity to Vietnam, China. These people are bringing machines to India. There is so much of opportunity to mechanize so many of our industry. For example, we have been looking at this Makana industry. There is so much of human labor. Yes, I don't want you to eliminate labor, but if you have to increase your productivity, if you have to increase reduce the cost of operation, there is mechanization needed. Whether you like it, you don't like it, there is going to be mechanization in these industries. Why we want to lose this opportunity to any other country, especially to China and Vietnam, when we have the potential to innovate and develop these products and rule this industry. So that is one thing that I want every entrepreneur or any other aspirant entrepreneur to look at this as a great opportunity. That is one point I wanted to.
Yeah, so from opportunity slightly we'll go more statistical and then really zoom down into a couple of things. So if you look at the agriculture market linkage or output of Indian context is around $450 billion, keeps on growing year on year. And if you look at a food consumption, that's around $700 billion, right? 700. So that middle layer where agriculture output is getting sold and where the food product is getting consumed either through restaurants, maybe at a domestic level or through the export, that opportunity size is around $250-300 billion, right? And you have to start breaking that opportunities into value chain specific and product specific things where we see more specific opportunities. Like for example, India has cracked very good in a French fries, frozen French fries market, right? It's a journey for India from right crop to processing to meeting to export standards. That's the journey this country has seen over a period of a decade. Now, the other part of the story we can look at is the export-import balance. So roughly $50 billion is the export market, $30 billion is import, where surplus in terms of the global transaction. But if you break down this export-import, there are two opportunities on each side. Something that we are exporting, can we meet to the better standards and do more export of that? So for example, spices were very good. Can we improve the quality? Can we meet to the standards of Europe and US in a better way and deliver that? Second is, what are the opportunities in export? Those are lying, but we are not utilizing that, right? So that's the second piece of export. And we really look at global trade, what's happening, and figure out Indonesia, for example, my one product is going, can I add other products from Indian basket? So that's on export side. If you look at import data, there are two types of imports. One is something that is we are importing modified starches, we are importing oats, we are importing tomato purees, pulses, oil, right? So can we have a local level creation where we reduce down this import and we take away the dollar impact, we take away the import duties, etc. And also can we become a self-sustainable and a net exporter of these import commodities, right? Cashew is a very good example, we are importing a lot from Africa, we used to export, now it is coming down. So there are these buckets of four. Look at what can be exported more, look at what is not exported, can we export, look at import substitution and become a net exporter of what is getting imported, right? So those are the four buckets we look at. Oats is roughly 500 crore opportunity, cashew is roughly a couple of $1 billion opportunity. So we have to really start zooming into these opportunities, go to a detail level, figure out why we have a right to win in that commodity or value chain and crack that commodity. And mostly this has a role where agriculture and private sector processing businesses need to club together and look at what has to be done by development sector, what has to be done by the private sector. Join these hands together and move forward in this journey.
If you look at Samulati, we have been in this journey for the last decade or so. And though the main business for us is the credit, non-banking finance company, but as we work in the value chain, we thought it's important we also need to invest and collaborate a lot more on this. So Samunidhi has got a in-house Samaran program where we actually collaborate with many of the startup agtech companies so that we will be able to help them with not only from a finance perspective but also in terms of many of them need a demo to be done, many of them wanted their product to be reached to the smaller farmers. So Samunidhi is the medium for them to, we work with so many farmer producer organizations, we help them with that. Very important is when these opportunities come, we at Samunidhi, we look at a 3 bucket. From sowing till harvest, we have the pre-production, production and the post-production. So if you see the transformation that has happened in the last decade, we have seen at the pre-production level, today you are able to understand what is your soil quality. There are no tests available. Similarly, we can also get into weather alerts and all. So we have got many of the weather stations being there. Oh, the farmer is always updated in terms of what the next week weather is going to be, and he can take his preventive action. Number 2, at the production, we are also looking at some of the technologies which is in precision farming. We are already having the drone, right? The drone actually takes care of everything. But we don't stop at that. We also look at in terms of the economies of scale. Farmers can't afford a drone. So can we work out a product and solution and reach that as a service to the smallholder farmers? On the post-production, we are connected with many of the processing units like your S4S, Nano, what they all are into post-production activities. So Samunidhi actually sees these as an opportunity from a commercial perspective where it adds value to everyone, not only from a smallholder farmer level to the farmer producer organizations or the cooperatives which is offering these services can look at this as a customizing center or a processing unit up to a demand center where we work with these entities. It's a business opportunities also for them. So that's what I would say from the opportunities.
And maybe just to talk about this a little bit more, right? Like in terms of the opportunities that you spoke about, whether it's figuring out the right commodities to export, figuring out the right kind of import substitution, then also more sort of like tech-oriented opportunities, whether it's precision farming, drones, etc. One thing I wanted to understand from you better is that, is there anything that's changed on the ground that will enable this to take off today versus, let's say, 10 years ago? What has changed on the ground in terms of the farmers' receptiveness to this, technology enablement on the ground to enable some of this to actually take off today? And are they ready to sort of pay for it also is the other question, right? Because you may want to use drones, you may want to use precision farming, but how many farmers exist today? Is there enough of a market? Do they have the capabilities to pay for it?
Actually, the market is very huge, and from a farmer perspective, definitely they are using all these technologies, okay, which is adding a lot of value to them. As far as the affordability is concerned, basically it's a challenge because they cannot pay such a high thing. That's where Samunidhi we take the farmer producer organization route, so that we keep this as a middleman who will be able to provide all the services. When it comes to some of the solutions which are affordable, which can be anywhere between a 30,000 to a lakh of rupees, that's where we understand like a small cold storage, which is especially for the perishable commodities. There we have seen with the DRE technologies, a smallholder farmer is able to invest and he is also able to take that as a solution. But what the processing unit which ma'am is talking about in terms of a little medium 5 to 10 lakh rupees or a drone which is 10 lakh rupees, it will take time. But coming back to your question in terms of, are they actually looking at these services? Are there is a change management and they are looking at this? Definitely yes, there's a huge opportunity.
So I will again go into some more specific examples around what has changed and what we are seeing almost in a decade. So one is SLG network. What we saw earlier, what we see today, there is a dramatic change. Technology adaptation has been done at people who are leading SLGs at a village level. So that has also brought in a lot of women participation in the whole process. Like as far as supply chain is 100% women operated. And our primary point of contact to reach out to the village is SLG and people who are doing the whole SLG onboarding. Second thing that we have seen is also FPOs, right? And in FPOs there are, say, definitely grey areas where there are a lot of driven by trade.
Sorry, maybe just for the audience, what exactly is an FPO?
FPO is basically farmer producer organization, which basically have shareholders which are mainly farmers, right?
So it's a cooperative.
It's more of a registered as a company, but shareholders are basically farmers, right? and a lot of that infrastructure has been created by CBPO. So for example, one of our partner organizations, SAFU from some Chhatrapati Samajangar is here, right? So these organizations have really created that infrastructure where private players can come and plug, right? So we don't have to really go and reinvent these wheels because they are working from 30 years. Third point that we have seen is a lot of irrigation work where it has been done. Market linkage has been a critical challenge because you ask farmers to switch from staple crops to more of value-added crops, and then suddenly there is no market linkage. Like in the places where we work, if we get 5 tons of carrot, for example, in local mandi, the prices will crash because that market cannot consume 5 tons of carrot, for example, right? So that's the third piece. Fourth is the technological piece and financing piece, which is much improved, and one of the reasons is we have seen a lot of penetration by other digital platforms, what we were talking in the morning. Those platforms of digital penetration have been created, and that can be leveraged. So all our payments working with say 25,000 farmers, 100% occur by the digital transaction, right? So the entire issue of whether farmer will have account, not will have account is immaterial. That has changed. Last point I will touch base is also when we developed a technology of solar dehydration during my master's work, even single phase electricity was not reliable. In the last 10-15 years, it has been reliable, and that single phase electricity enhance your productivity. So I think if you look at sector by sector, structural, financing, technological, we have improved a lot on multiple segments in last 1 decade, and that is creating a more vibrant ecosystem for players to engage in.
So I will just add a few thoughts here. So I'll give you 2 case studies from the cashew industry. One is from Kerala, the other is from West Bengal and Odisha. So what happened, Kerala 10 years back was a capital of cashew processing. So it used to export the maximum number of cashew nuts, and they had close to 1,000 units, 1,500 units of cashew processing plants in Kerala. Now this industrial revolution or the mechanization was happening in the cashew industry, and these Mangalore and other the Konkan areas were all slowly adapting to the mechanization of cashew processing. But Kerala resisted this the mechanization of cashew processing because of its own internal issues and also because of the mindset of the people and all that. It literally is right now only 10% processing in cashew industry. Can you believe? From 1,500 units, now not more than 150 units of cashew processing is happening in Kerala, and there is absolutely zero export that is happening in Kerala. So this is the impact that I saw in Kerala. Then of course there is a lot of loss of job, lot of articles about how Kerala lost its job market because of cashew industry, non-mechanization and all that. Now then the next story comes is about Odisha. Odisha and West Bengal, they were all manually processing. They were all small time processes, not as big as Kerala or Mangalore or Goa. So these were just budding processes, and they had absolutely zero knowledge about cashew processing. Just because they adapted to little mechanization in terms of cutting and grading, now they are able to sustain against the integration of cashew processing, processing etc. Now what is happening in the cashew industry? Small processes are becoming bigger and bigger. Now this because of the smaller mechanization and the mechanization mindset of these people, they are able to sustain against these odds, and they are able to grow year on year 30%. So this is the difference I see in the cashew industry because of mechanization and non-mechanization. So when you say about technology impact, this is what I see.
This is super helpful and insightful. I think a few themes that are sort of recurring across all three of you. One is obviously mechanization. The second is digitization in terms of payments. The third is also a movement towards these cooperatives, right? I don't think FPOs existed in India 15 years, very few existed in India 15 years ago. Obviously the cooperative movement started with milk and dairy in India, but over time, these are not exactly cooperatives of course, but they are farmer-owned sort of like private organizations, and that's enabling smallholder farmers to play a role because this sort of aggregates their demand and aggregates their supply also. I think something that all three of you to some extent spoke about, but I just want to highlight is that in India, if you want to serve these smallholder farmers, you can't do it in the same way as other parts of the world. They're very small in terms of their size, scale, and capacity to invest. So you need to have an integrated offering for them, which incorporates aggregation, which incorporates financing, and the right kind of distribution channels also, and doesn't necessarily eliminate middlemen, but enables the middlemen to help you serve these communities and these farmers better. And so if you want to do it in a successful manner, you can't just think about selling products, but you have to think about selling the outcomes and the solutions, which integrates all of these different things. And you have to have the right tie-ups with, let's say, a Samanati for financing, with someone else like NanoPix for the grading. And you need to think of innovative models which may not just be like selling the products, but also potentially leasing them, them paying you per kilo of sort of processing. Different models that need to be innovated for the fact that these are extremely sort of like small farmers which don't necessarily have the ability to pay for a large amount of capex. So I think that's something so the good part is it looks like there are the structural enablers in place, whether it's bank accounts, whether it's penetration of financing, whether it's the ability of like farmers to come together in a cooperative kind of movement. All of those structural enablers are in place, and that enables more and more commercial enterprises to go and serve them in different ways and help them as well as earn money from it, right? Like while doing so. So I think that's definitely something that's interesting. Wanted to talk a little bit about exports. You mentioned it briefly on cashews, about how India is no longer an exporter. Weber mentioned briefly. Something interesting I heard the other day as I was talking to folks is some of our exports, let's say from India to Europe, 30% of our exports get rejected at the European ports. It's a shocking number, right? Like 30% are getting rejected, and primarily because of quality. Either the pesticide levels are too high, or there's fungus on the products, and it's all to do with the way that our products are sort of aggregated and then shipped to these countries, and there's almost no quality control in our value chain. What has to change this? What has to change in our value chains to really drive better quality, better grading, better management of the products so they don't spoil on the way in terms of fungus and infections, and better sort of like input side also, so that we can control for how much pesticide is used in the products, etc. and the certifications actually make sense.
Maybe I can go with the specific cases because it's very value chain specific things. Right? So if you look at, let's look at two buckets. One is a fresh thing where we are talking about insect contamination, we are talking about pesticide residue, and fresh value chain is very fragile. If material is reached to a port and it's rejected, then you really don't have a choice, right? Versus you look at other value chains. So for example, dehydrated onion, roughly the 1,000 crore value chain export angle from India perspective. Now, what are the challenges for onion angle? It is mainly TPC, which is a microbiological contamination. Now Europe has banning ETO, that is the chemical treatment of biological killing. So how do you really take your plants or invest in technology, mainly from the academia angle, so that without chemicals you can still kill the microorganisms in the dehydrated onion or dehydrated spices, and that will really open up these markets. Now these regulations initially started only with dehydrated onion for export market. Now these regulations by trade agreements are being implemented at India level. If you are exporting a cooked vegetable from here, the material that you are using should also have a microbiological logo, right? So these regulations were initially only for export market, but now those regulations are being implemented by someone who is willing to export value-added products from India. So this is a structural problem. This we have to solve. If you look at the reasons of some of these things, it's a very fragmented supply chain coming from a lot of farmers. Someone is selling 500 kg, someone is selling 5 tons, 2 tons. Everything is getting aggregated. One of the solutions that we are thinking around, and again this needs to be investigated, is maybe we can have a lot by lot separation and a quick testing thing. Let's say for pesticide residue, let us see for microbiological contamination, where we have 10 farmers, one gives 500 kg, another gives 5 tons, another gives 10 tons. You test this, and only something that is okay, checked for a particular market, get mixed, right? So those are some of the simpler things. Also, some of can be larger technological interventions, those are needed, but that has to be really tackled commodity by commodity, and I think there is a very strong academia has to play in the whole thing. Aflatoxin issue, we are talking about maize, we are talking about spices. There are technologies being globally developed in which aflatoxin can be taken away from the food product, right? India has to take these leads for some of the commodities that we are looking at. And last point on this, unfortunately, people who are paying for this is India. Something that is getting rejected in export market is basically supplied in Indian market, right? So that's a larger health issue for Indian country.
So you're saying it comes back to India and is sold?
It's rejected at our ports also, right? And then it goes for Indian markets.
So maybe to, as you also add more to this, what's the role that Agritech companies or new startups can play in some of this? Like you spoke a little bit about traceability, testing, making sure that like we can actually trace back to which farmer it's come from, and then only sort of mix the different. It all fundamentally comes down to the fact that Indian agri is extremely fragmented with lots of different farmers. So is there a role that technology can play to help trace back and make sure that we're mixing the right batch, like a batch has the right mix of products, and we prevent some of these things from happening?
So when you talk of traceability, it is already there now. There are technologies available, and many of the large institutional buyers actually working in this direction, wherein you are able to just get into the sourcing, and you can look at the barcode and say, okay, this has come from which farmer, which state, and all. That's there, but it is in specific value chains, and few institutional buyers get into this. But I will talk about the export opportunities are huge, doable. But I will tell you the practical challenges. When we at Samruddhi go and talk to the smallholder farmers, first question is, we have been doing this for 40 years, right? So the change management is a big issue. At the same time, you really need to protect their interests, because end of the day, they are smallholder farmers with small holdings, right? And end of the income has to be taken care of. So when we as a banker, we actually go and talk to them, we customize some of the solutions where if there is a safety net that can be given to the smallholder farmer. That's one which really kicks off in terms of your engagement with them. Second, as you rightly said, in terms of collaborations and product customization, similar to what they do, product innovations and customizations, we at Financial Services we also come up with a lot of product solutions, right? We go and talk to lateral agencies for credit guarantee structures, we talk to a couple of people for philanthropic capital, first loss deferred quality, everything we bring into as a structure so that you can actually get it on the ground and make it sustainable. So that's one. Number two, when it start this activity, currently we are doing a project on soya end-to-end. So we are working with 5,000 farmers in Madhya Pradesh. The end objective is, can we get that 20% additional income in the hands of the farmer? So we take them through the entire route, but very important for us to do these activities as an implementation partner. We are very, very clear in terms of how to execute it. But afterwards, what? So we have already tied up with 2 large institutional buyers, because they also look at more from a sustainability. So we know very clearly they are going to procure the entire commodity on harvest, and out of that, 50% will be export for them. So that way we are actually doing the entire value chain study, so that each and every actor is aligned, including the tech players, the institutional buyer of commodities, and on the supply side, smallholder farmers and the FPOs. So that everybody doesn't work in silos, but they work to leverage their expertise. But you as one entity connect everyone, collaborate. End of the day, one impact that you have to see is the farmer is getting that additional income, because that commodity is now certified and it is qualified for exports.
I'll just add a small, it's a deviation from what you spoke. Cashew is a very unique commodity. The lower grades get exported in cashew, and as Indians, we can take pride that we consume the most valuable or the highest quality cashews. But we were the largest exporters of cashews 10 years before. Now we have lost it to Vietnam just because we didn't mechanize on time, and we are not able to compete with them only on price. We are high on quality. There is no competition with us with Vietnam cashew quality. Cashew quality is lower than us, but still we are not able to compete with them only on price. And that is only because they are far more mechanized and far more integrated than what we are in India. I'm not complaining, because whatever we are producing, whatever we are processing, it is consumed by us. But it can be a case study, unlike other agricultural product, how we can compete with pricing with other countries in our agricultural process. So that is one thing I wanted to add.
I think again, a few things again I just want to recap, right? The challenge in India again comes down to fragmentation, smallholder farmers who can't necessarily invest in these things themselves. And we have fragmentation across multiple levels, right? We have fragmentation at the farmer level, even our traders are very small, even our processors are small, right? Everyone is small in India. So even when we've been looking at, as we look at investments, one of the things that we see the companies that are scaling up are figuring out how to aggregate each of these layers and sort of manage them as if you are a buyer, you're still dealing with one large company, but on the back end, they are actually disaggregated and actually a layer which is managing some of these MSMEs, right? Like almost like taking multiple MSME processing units or traders, and you on the front end are dealing with one customer, one seller or one buyer, while they are actually aggregating everyone at the back end through technology and managing all of these different pieces through technology, right? Whether it is traceability, whether it is certifications, all of that is, and in some sense, it's the, almost think about it as a disaggregated factory or a disaggregated trader, but being managed through technology. And I think that's the interesting, like kind of the next decade to us, that's what could be interesting. That the way that India powers not just agri, but we see this across multiple B2B value chains, the way that India will supply the world will not be the same as China or a Vietnam, where let's say a Foxconn has come in and employs 200,000 people in one factory, right? We are fundamentally, the way that the country is structured is a little bit different, and we are going to have a lot of different smaller units, but can we use technology to integrate those units and still give the same quality on the output side? Because there is an advantage of an integrated unit in terms of economies of scale, in terms of quality, in terms of control. But I think the innovations that are happening in India are more around how do you use technology to sort of give that same quality, give that same price, have the same controls, using technology to aggregate these sort of, like on the MSME side, they're at the M of the MSME, right? Really micro and not even in the S or the mid-market, right? Like they're really, really small. So I think that's an interesting model that is evolving, and something to think about as we look at Agritech, because the challenge is fundamentally around this very, very fragmented supply, and Agritech companies, the role that they can play is around aggregating it through technology. So we'll open it up for questions now, and happy to answer, and our panelists can answer some of these questions, please. There's a lady there.
I'm a farmer from Kerala, specifically, right? So from processing, value addition, everything. But it can be specific to my particular crop. But what I see is, the biggest challenge is actually in the production. The number of variables that a farmer has to deal with on an everyday basis, or probably sometimes even something like an hourly basis, to get the crop right. Now, that is a far bigger challenge than what happens after you produce a crop. Okay, you have the wastage and storing and all those things. So now my question is basically, as thought leaders, what is the percentage of effort you think is actually going on in the protection aspect of it? How do we maintain the quality? Now, the whole talk about removing pesticide residue wouldn't come in if you do not use pesticides as much in the current scenario, right? If you're talking about use of artificial chemicals in processing, you really need to think about the amount of chemicals that goes in when you produce a crop, because protecting the yields are far more impactful for the farmer than the processing aspect of it, right? So the impact it has on individual farmers. So what is the percentage of effort that goes on the production aspect? That is my question, basically.
And were you sort of focused on that, or what exactly are you asking?
Companies being focused on that, money being put on that,
development actors, NGOs, value chain players, particularly integrated value chain players are critically playing a role in these things. And so, for example, a lot of agriculture departments really going out and talking about this. How that is scaling up from private sector, there are limited examples from my understanding in terms of figuring out the right value chains there. One of the understanding that we have so far is any activities that are giving money to the farmer, than taking money, are something that has the fastest adoption in the current ecosystem for the private sectors. So if these models of agri inputs, agri advisory, better agriculture practices is linked to better payments and premium to the farmers, and someone is taking that ownership from both the sides, that can drive this change. at this point, the more activities we are seeing on the output side, there are limited activities on the agri input side and the advisory side. This is my understanding. Happy to learn more.
So maybe I'll just add a little bit to that. So I think I'll tell you where. So at Axel, we've been investing in sort of Agritech for maybe half a decade or more now. I'll tell you how our learnings from this, right? Like we've made mistakes. Some of the things have worked, some of the things have not worked. So learnings from this is that we approach agri also very similar to how we approach any other industry, which is that let's work backwards from the customer. So at least a lot of the initial investment into, as Vaibhav said also, is they've gone into let's focus on how do we increase revenue for the farmers by focusing on sort of output side interventions or demand side. What can we do better on the demand side, right? Whether it's premiumization, more exports, etc. Now, some of our companies have reached a maturity stage where they've figured out a lot of the demand side things, and now they're sort of supply constrained. And now they're going backwards and working with farmers to solve exactly some of those problems, right? Whether it's better inputs, whether it's reducing pesticide usage, whether it's improving output of the farmers through precision agriculture, etc. So I think it's a little bit of the maturity curve, but at least our push always from the investor side is that let's work backwards demand, because you don't want to be in you don't want to be in a situation where the product that you have and the output is not mapped to the right sort of pre-demand, willing to pay you extra money. So I think it is a little bit also of the maturity of where we are, and as startups become more, move forward in terms of their maturity, become larger, it will automatically flow backwards.
Hello, this is Dr. Prasanna Patil from SPMSM Chhatrapati Samajnagar, which Vaibhav mentioned in this speech. So he briefly mentioned about the grey area of FPOs. The second part is, do you see any role of the FPO promoting non-profits in this chain? Thank you.
Can also get into a lot of other services that can be given to the smallholder farmers. So FPO is an important entity, and definitely government is also going to promote a lot of FPOs. Already under the CBPO 10,000 FPOs, there are a lot of FPOs got promoted. In India, as we speak today, there are 25,000 plus FPOs already there, right? And it's going to grow. And definitely that is what is going to add a lot of value to the smallholder farmers. And how do you take all the technologies what Vaibhav spoke about is through the FPO, because even for a tech company, individually going and talking to a farmer is not viable, right? So they need to have a route where can they go and touch base with a middle B who is a business partner, and through that middle B can they go and touch upon 100 to 200 farmers. It becomes economies not only for Vaibhav as such, anyone in this value chain, that is a good thing. So FPO is definitely an important, and as I said, government is really pushing a lot of FPOs to come at a block level, because first time when we started interacting it was at a district, and now they are going further in terms of, and like a bank, they don't just give licenses. Even if you wanted to have a government support to promote an FPO, they say go to the block where it is needed. So that's what it is. Thanks.
I think we can take two more questions.
Which United Nations have even attributed to, they were saying by 2030 to 2060, the world itself is really going to face a problem of food shortages.
Sorry, with what? Food shortage.
Sure. All because of climate change, which we are facing in the country. It's indeed going to affect quantity because of climate change. A lot of produce are not going to be made. And as well, in terms of quality too, the climate change is also going to affect quality. My question is, how can we use the Agritech to address this climate change issue which we are facing, not only in India, but in the world at large?
Is playing the role in all the three stages, the pre-production, production, and the post-harvest. Over and above, to mitigate this climate risk, and you really need to change the package of practices, right, to make it more organic, right, no tillage. There is a lot of effort on institution and capacity building that needs to be done, and which is happening. And government is also actually coming up with a policy document in terms of how do you engage with this on the ground so that these challenges are addressed. It started in a small scale. The extension of this is we are also getting into carbon credits. Too early at this point in time, because you have to actually go through 3 to 4 crop cycles just to see what is the carbon impact that has come, the carbon credits, which can also be sold and we can pass it on to the farmer, some portion of it. So there is a lot of effort which is happening. This talks care of even the food security what we spoke about. Thank you.
Last question.
We are from an investment going into development of technology for agricultural issues per se to augment farmers' income.
Answer from the investor perspective. We have invested in a company which is basically using agri sort of what's called fiber molded products. So that's basically agri byproducts, and they're creating sort of recyclable, basically fully compostable packaging. So that's definitely something that we are very, very actively looking at overall in terms of replacement, as well as business-led demand to replace plastic and reduce the use of plastic using compostable materials. The way that we think about it again is definitely backwards from the customer more than how to. I'm being very honest with more than increasing. We believe finally it will increase farmer income, but the focus is that what do customers really want and how do we serve them with the right products in terms of. And there is a huge trend, not just in India, but also in Europe, in US, to basically move away from plastic. And there are a lot of regulations that are coming in terms of single-use plastic reduction, etc. And we believe that is going to be a huge sort of tailwind for using agri byproducts for things like fiber molded products or bagasse and things like that.
Tech companies too early at this point in time, which actually deals with this agri waste. The opportunities, from Samunathi's point of view, they need our support in terms of working with, say, 500 farmers, where they can go and aggregate this aggregate waste and get into production cycle, and might believe whatever is the byproduct, NBA, fodder again, or it can be used as a fertilizer and all. So, good opportunity. There are tech companies who are already doing this. Many more will come from innovation point of view, but we at Samunathi actually look at this as an opportunity to connect all of them, and especially with the sole intention of this agriculture waste also get that additional income in the hands of the farmer, which currently is actually doing, right?
Yes, thank you so much. I know a lot of questions. And I now request Mr. Dinesh Reddy, who is the Director of Better Cotton Initiatives, who leads for Deshpande Foundation, Telangana, to please present the token of appreciation and gratitude for participating in the meaningful dialogue. From fields to market, bridging the gap for rural India through Agritech, Mr. Rajit Parekh, the moderator, Sridhar Ishwaran, Suchitra Balasubramaniam, and Dr. Vaibhav Tipke. Thank you so much. I request